You're listening to In Clear Focus, a unique perspective on the business of advertising, produced weekly by Bigeye. Hello, I'm your host, Adrian Tennant, VP of Insights at Bigeye, an audience-focused, creative-driven, full-service advertising agency. We're based in Orlando, Florida, but serve clients across the United States and beyond. Thank you for joining us today. The most recent data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that unemployment is at 3.5%, the lowest rate since 1969. Filling vacant positions or newly created positions is a significant challenge for many employers, especially those seeking to grow, and competition for workers is fierce. Candidates with creative and media skills have many options when it comes to potential employers. Design, marketing, and writing skills are sought by companies beyond advertising and media agencies. Consider tech companies and the growth of direct-to-consumer products and services, many of which have opted to develop creative and media buying capabilities in-house. The rise of digital media has also brought with it a new wave of tech-savvy creatives and analytical thinkers, many of them working client-side. Advertising agencies certainly compete for creative talent, but in addition, a challenge to recruit and retain workforces that reflect America's ethnic and racial diversity. Almost half a century ago, the American Association of Advertising Agencies, better known as the 4As, recognized the lack of diversity in the industry. In 1973, the 4As launched its Minority Intern program to encourage students from diverse ethnic and racial backgrounds to consider careers in advertising. And later, the organization awarded scholarships to African American, Hispanic, and Asian American young professionals entering the industry. Nearly 50 years on, the 4As continues to represent the marketing communications agency business. The organization's stated mission is to empower agencies to thrive by advancing issues such as evolving agency models, but also talent retention, diversity, and gender equality. Joining me via phone from New York City today, Reema Elghossain is Vice President of the 4As Foundation and responsible for talent, equity, and inclusion. Reema has 15 years of experience in education, talent development, and diversity, and leads some of the industry's most prominent diversity pipeline initiatives. These include the Multicultural Advertising Internship program, known as MAIP, which evolved from the original Minority Intern program. Reema also oversees the 4As Foundation's educational programs, scholarships, and awards, as well as professional and organizational development opportunities. Welcome to In Clear Focus, Reema.
Hello, thank you.
Reema, could you explain a little more about the foundation and the part it plays within the 4As?
Sure, absolutely. So the 4As Foundation was established in 1997 with a commitment to provide scholarships and awards for young people of color interested in getting involved in the advertising industry. In the last 2 years, the 4As made an intentional decision to move MAIP and our educational programs, which include our high school initiatives, over into the 4As Foundation. So it really serves the industry, advertising and marketing at large, with all of their talent needs, especially when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we really try to support the industry from the 4As Foundation with finding diverse talent, with educating diverse talent on what advertising is and the experience, and then really developing that talent once they're into the industry.
I mentioned during the introduction that the 4As had the foresight to establish an internship program focused on diversity back in the 1970s. In what kinds of ways does your work with the 4As Foundation today help develop young professionals in their careers?
We do it a number of ways. Within our educational programs, we partner right now with 2 high schools in New York City that are predominantly students of color that actually have an advertising track within the high school programs. And so what we do for our high school students is we try to immerse them into the advertising industry. So we connect them with speakers and experts in the industry to share insight. We host events and competitions for them so that they can understand what it's like to get briefed by a client and to do pitches niches. We train them on what every discipline is in the industry and really try to help slowly build a network for them while they're in high school and show them opportunities to be able to major in advertising and have internships throughout their career. Through MAIP, we do it a number of ways. Through MAIP, we have our fellowship program, and that runs annually. And we do 13-week virtual spring training for all of our fellows before they even enter their internship at their agency. And that, again, trains them on what each discipline is, but then also we train them on some transferable skills and then how to navigate the industry, especially coming from a diverse place. And then we have over 3,500 alumni that have gone through our program since 1973. And what we do is we partner with agencies and outside companies to provide any type of personal development, professional development, networking opportunities.
Fantastic. Now, can you talk a little bit about the process for students who may be interested in applying for the 4A's MAIP program?
So around end of August and into mid-October, we host applications for students to apply to be part of our program. It's for juniors, seniors, and grad students across the country. And it's a pretty extensive application process. And we ask for essay questions, video, letters of recommendation, and really just want to understand, what their interest is in the industry. We then give them a screening process. We do coach them on interview tips and prepare them through the process. And then we have our community of volunteers in the industry that really support our initiatives who will interview them. And once they pass through all of those stages, they then become finalists. At that same time, our agencies are applying to host fellows for the next year. And then we have a huge selection kickoff where agencies will then make offers to their favorite finalists. And they place an offer, and that MAIP finalist has the opportunity to accept or decline. If they accept, and it can be anywhere in the country, then they are now become a fellow. Once they become a fellow, we actually support the agencies by taking care of housing and travel, and then again, onboarding them with that spring training and an orientation to get them really immersed into the program before they even enter their internship.
Well, that sounds very thorough. And do you typically have that sort of kickoff in New York City, or does it change according to where the students are coming from?
Sure. So the actual live kickoff is in New York City, but we live stream it. We live stream it through our Facebook page, our MAIP page, and through Zoom. And so all of our agency partners, all of the finalists, our alumni community, a lot will sign in and be able to watch it happening live. And so it's really exciting. We invite all of the finalists that are in New York to be able to attend, and they get to receive their offers live in person.
Let's change gears just a little bit. So with the visibility of the Me Too movement, there's heightened awareness of issues around gender inequality, bias, and discrimination within the workplace. And ad agencies have certainly not been immune from scrutiny. From where you stand, has Me Too been a kind of a wake-up call for the industry?
I think absolutely, in a lot of different ways. I think it's something that everyone is aware of, but no one really knew what to do. And so when that movement came around, I think it woke a lot of people up in the industry. And I think, one, it scared a lot of agencies because they were whispers before. And then now it just became something where there's actually some accountability that's going to be happening. And so I definitely think it shook up the industry in a major way. And I think it still is in a lot of ways. And it definitely shifted the understanding and awareness, I think, for the talent and the employees to realize what their opportunities were and having a voice and being able to know what their rights were. So I definitely think it impacted the industry from the top down.
Traditional gender divisions and labels, the binary choice of male or female, are being replaced with the more fluid concept of gender identity. Thinking differently about gender identity also has caused potentially significant impacts on the work an agency does for clients, everything from consumer insights research and brand strategy through to creative and messaging. In this context, how well are agencies addressing these long-held assumptions about gender?
That's a great question. It's a conversation that's becoming louder, and it's something that's becoming more important. And especially, I think, when agencies are looking at their employees and saying, we have to be able to create a safer space and a space that's more open for all. And so looking at their people holistically, I think, is allowing them to also be able to work with clients and say, okay, our consumers also need to be looked at in a holistic way as well. It's a conversation that is happening to support who works in the industry, but then because I think that inevitably will impact how they support clients and their consumers.
In addition to gender bias discrimination and identity, what are some of the other areas that you work with member agencies on?
A lot of things. So talent development, we also talk to our agencies about and supporting them with how to have a more diverse workspace, how to be more inclusive, what systems they can put into place that can support that. We talk a lot about retention. We talk about how do we move diverse talent up the corporate ladder? And then also what are systems and initiatives that they can put into place that really can support their employees there, not one to bring in talent, but then also to make it a place where, like I guess I mentioned, the talent wants to stay.
Right. Have you codified these into sort of a set of best practices?
Yeah, we like to work with our agencies to produce those best practices. We all have a lot of ideas, and I think it really depends on where that agency is. So we have some maybe smaller to mid-sized agencies that are really just starting their diversity initiatives. They might not even have a lead person in their diversity and equity initiatives. And then there's the larger agencies that might already have a D&I lead or team, and they have different needs at the same time. So we do have some best practices in place, and it really depends on what the agency is. And then I have my own opinion.
Let's get to those. Well, first of all, I mean, you referenced the fact that the 4As includes holding company agencies, which I'm guessing are typically in the major metros, as well as independently owned agencies, many of which, like ourselves, are in smaller markets. How then do you apply differences in how differently sized agencies identify and approach these kinds of issues?
So I think for me, it would be just doing a little bit of research and talking to each agency and finding out what their needs are, finding out what their budget is and where to start, right? So if they're talking about we want to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion in the talent world, the first thing is, how diverse is your agency? Now, I don't expect agencies to share their numbers, but what is your first goal? Is it one, hiring diverse talent so that you can add diversity to your pool? Or is it we have the diverse talent, we want to add more, but what can we do to be a more inclusive space? And, there's definitely different needs when it comes to both. I definitely think every agency, whether it's independent, small, all the way up to the larger holding companies, all need to continue to hire more diverse talent. So that's, I think, a problem across the board. But depending on where they are and what their resources are, there are different ways that they can make a better environment.
Specifically thinking about job candidates and young professionals, do you see any generational differences in how today's young professionals, maybe just starting out in the industry or have 1 or 2 years experience, how their career decisions contrast or compare to older, more established workers?
Absolutely. They are thinking of things that I never thought of when I was their age. They are thinking about what are your mental health and wellness programs that you have established at your agency. They're thinking about even things that might not even matter to them early on, but like what are your maternity and paternity leave programs? What is your work-life balance? They are thinking of things that are important to them that, I'll be honest, like at 37, I didn't think of when I was their age. And they're holding agencies a lot more accountable. They're looking at agencies and saying, what can you do for me? Not just what can I do for you? I would say when they first get into the industry, there is still that same fear and desperation of finding a job. In a lot of places, especially for our community, as young people of color, there's this fear of being able to find a job. But the questions that they're asking are very much different. They're not just what are the hours and the salary and the insurance benefits. They're also just asking about the experience, the environment. Do you have any diversity and inclusion initiatives? Do you even have D&I lead? What programs do you have that can help support me? Do you have mental health? Do you have employee resource groups? And do you have professional development opportunities? These are questions that they're asking, and they're also not afraid to be able to leave at a faster rate than, other, I would say, older generations. They find a company and they want to stick with it for a long time. I think the young professionals now are saying, if you're not putting into me, I'm okay with getting up and finding a new opportunity. And so I think it's definitely forcing agencies to think a little bit differently about what they're providing to their employees.
Right. So to that point, continuing professional education is more the responsibility of the employer than the employee. Is that fair?
I think so. I think it's a very competitive market right now. I think there's a lot of young, amazing talent. And I think the industry knows they're losing talent really quickly, and especially because they haven't been able to keep up with what other industries are doing, from like remote days to better work-life balance, to personal and professional development opportunities. And I think our young professionals see that. I think they talk to each other, and I think they know what issues there are. And so when they're coming into interviews, they're a lot more intentional with the questions they're asking.
Are you finding that younger professionals are considering freelancing right out of college?
Yeah, I would say maybe after a couple of years. I think I've noticed that there are some of our alumni who have gone through the program maybe a couple of years ago, and they reach out to me a lot and they're looking for freelance. I think they like the comfort of being able to work from home, especially this industry. It's expected to work, a lot more than 40 hours a week. And so if they already plan and anticipate to do that, they want a little bit more freedom to be able to do that at their own time. This is definitely like a non-conventional generation where it doesn't have to be done at 9 to 5 and can still get done really well. And I think freelance is a really attractive option for them, especially because, and I can speak a lot more about our community. I mean, if they're not feeling comfortable or feeling included at their agency, I think they would sometimes rather leave some of that toxicity and be able to just work for themselves on their own and to be able to work on projects. And the industry is kind of set up so that it can do that, right? You can work on a team, you can work on one project, and then once that's done, you can work on another one, and you don't necessarily have to be married to one agency to do that.
A great point. I just actually picked up some research put out by Statista. It states that there's actually been a 78% increase in job posts mentioning workplace flexibility since 2016. And 37% of employees would switch to a job that allows them to work off-site at least part of the time. The trend, of course, being most pronounced among millennial workers. That doesn't sound too surprising based on what we've just been discussing.
Yeah, not at all. I would love that too. I think there is a lot more flexibility in it. It creates a lot of space. I mean, imagine, you're working till 10 p.m. at night, and then to be able to come in at noon the next day, it does help prevent burnout. It helps prevent not just exhaustion, but feeling overwhelmed, and I think it makes for more productivity. So I've seen a lot of other industries that have been having more flexibility in that. And I just think it's really beneficial. And I think it's almost necessary. I don't know if the industry is even thinking about that just yet.
Great discussion, Reema. Are there any resources that you'd recommend for people interested in pursuing a career within advertising?
I read a lot of books on personal and professional development, and I think that's what I would suggest to any young professionals. I read books from Eckhart Tolle or Michael Singer. I read books, 15 Steps for Conscious Leadership. Those, I think, are going to be great tools that are going to help set you apart in the advertising industry, because I think it's not just about your specific skill, right? I think people come into this industry with a skill of a certain craft, and then they spend their entire careers perfecting that craft. And you're going to have all those opportunities to do that. And what I think is lacking sometimes is you continue to grow in that ladder, but you don't necessarily learn management skills, development skills, your communication skills and your styles, how to read and identify people. And I think what will set you apart and allow you to grow in the industry is if you focus on a lot of those resources. And that's usually the biggest advice that I give.
Reema, that was great advice indeed. And we will include links to those resources on the In Clear Focus webpage. For now, Reema, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
As Reema explained, the 4A's Foundation's Multicultural Advertising Internship Program, or MAIP for short, helps people from diverse ethnic and racial backgrounds enter the advertising industry. With some personal insights on what it's like to go through MAIP, I'm joined now here in the studio by Bigeye's digital marketing specialist, Maegan Trinidad, who is an alumna of MAIP. Welcome to In Clear Focus, Maegan.
Hello.
Firstly, can you briefly describe your role here at Bigeye?
I am a digital marketing specialist, and that entails doing a lot of reporting and optimizations for our clients' campaigns.
How long have you been at the agency?
I actually started as an intern in the fall of 2018, but I joined full-time in May of 2019.
And I should mention too that Maegan actually created the Airtable database that we use to track every step of the production process for these weekly podcasts. So we're very grateful for that. Thank you, Maegan.
No problem.
So thinking back, in high school, were you more drawn to liberal arts or STEM subjects?
Interestingly enough, I was more STEM. I wanted to be more creative. So I feel that advertising and marketing in general was a way for me to bridge those two things because I got to touch the creative side at least a little bit and help with my like analytical and mathematical background, as well as my research background.
Perfect. So was it high school, was that the time when you had the idea that advertising might be something you'd be interested in pursuing as a career?
I think so. I think I knew I wanted to do a business major. And when I basically learned what marketing was in high school. That's when I decided to pursue that in college.
When did you first learn about the 4A's Foundations program?
So one of my family members is actually also a MAIP alumna, and she's the one who told me about it before I entered my sophomore year in college, because she noticed that I could benefit from the program and seeing what it was like to work at an agency, because I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do with my marketing degree. So it was something that was worth a shot. And I ended up really liking working agency side, which is why I did MAIP 2 years and ended up at Bigeye.
What was the application process for MAIP like?
It involved several essays, a video interview, and after those were submitted, there were 2 further rounds of interviews.
Wow. I think you said you did the program twice?
I did.
Okay. What was the female to male ratio like? I'm curious.
I feel like it wasn't a stark difference, but it was a little more female, I'd say.
Okay. You attended the MAIP events in New York City. What were they like?
I feel like they were a really good experience. We got to go to several agencies, like there were large agencies. We went to Wyden and Kennedy, I believe. And it was interesting to see what different types of agencies looked like in their different organization styles, because obviously we could meet the different people who worked there and we got to network with them, and we also got to see what their space was like. And they were all very different.
Now, it sounds like there was some competition amongst agencies for interns on that MAIP program. Where did you intern?
The first year when I was in New York, I was at MEC, which is now Wavemaker. And the second year I was in Chicago at Mindshare. So
what did you personally feel were the most valuable lessons you learned from each of those internships?
To be adaptable. To be honest, when I went through MAIP, I was selected to be a media planner, and media planning wasn't my first choice. I wanted to be a strategy intern, because I mentioned earlier that I have a research background and I wanted to see what that was like to apply in an agency setting. But working in media planning did allow me to see what else was out there. And when I got to meet my teams at my agencies, they were very welcoming and they worked with what I felt were my strong suits. So they adapted what they had me do based on my desire to branch out and see how I could bring my skill set to the agencies.
Right. Have you kept in touch with any of your fellows?
My fellow fellows. Yeah, actually, I made really good friends during MAIP. That's another thing I really enjoyed. Most of you guys are strangers when you show up to your host city. And since you live together, you get to make some really good friends. I made some of my very closest friends during MAIP. Unfortunately, now they live across the country, but...
Well, at least you've got people you go visit and possibly crash on the sofa,
what I say.
Right? So, Maegan, what, if anything, do you think either MAIP or you could have done differently to enhance the experience?
I feel that MAIP has a really good structure already, and the only thing that I would change about it would be offering more of the... they're called MAIP labs, where most weeks you go to a different agency and they speak to a different topic. I would offer those in more cities. I understand that that's not really a feasible option in some of the host cities, but I feel that some of the larger cities like LA, they don't really have as many of those opportunities as they do in New York or Chicago. So I feel like I would make more of an effort to make more MAIP events for those places, or make something supplementary to them, because in certain host cities, they don't have as much opportunity because you get your fellowship, but you don't get the same things as you would in New York or Chicago. And I'm just saying that from the big cities I was in.
Of course. Maegan, would you recommend the program to others looking to enter the advertising industry?
Oh, absolutely. Even interns here, if I see that they have an interest and they're qualified to join the program and have an interest in specifically some of the disciplines that they have offered through MAIP, I talk to them about the program and tell them about the application process and what I went through. And if they're interested, I offer to tell them more about my personal experience. And I was a MAIP ambassador at UCF before I graduated. So I feel like I want to be a resource for other students. And if they want to learn more, they can contact me.
Perfect. Great insights, Maegan. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks also to Reema Elghossain, VP of the 4A's Foundation, responsible for talent, equity and inclusion. You can find links to the resources we discussed on the In Clear Focus page at bigeyeagency.com under Insights. Please consider subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite podcast player. And if you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. And if you have an Amazon Echo device, you can use the In Clear Focus skill to add the podcast to your flash briefing. Thank you for listening to In Clear Focus, produced by Bigeye. I've been your host, Adrian Tennant. Until next week, goodbye.